everyone. This animation module will show the characteristics of the new moon in Chibol 1432 a few months back. It will show also some false assumptions in understanding the astronomical values in response to my previous animation module. Before we start, I have to emphasize that for a while, the astronomical data to the left be ignored, as this is only for graphics animation, and the graphics are not to scale. Let's start this animation at the time of sunset August 29, 2011 in Jakarta. According to astronomical data I took from Accurate Times by Modama O'Day, they are as follows. 1. On August 29, 2011, the sun set at 17:53 whilst the moon set at 18:02, giving an altitude of the crescent was 2.1 degrees above the local horizon of Jakarta. 2. The thickness of the crescent was 0.1 minutes. Because crescent altitude was too low, Indonesian Authority invalidated this as the first of Chibol 1432. If we eliminate it by clicking this button 24 times or 24 hours, we are now at the sunset of August 30th, 2011. The astronomical data are as follows. The sun set at 17:53, the moon set at 18:58. Therefore, the altitude of the crescent was 15.6 degrees, and the crescent thickness was 0.87 angular minutes. From this information, we can then calculate the following information. 1. In 24 hours, the crescent grew at a rate of 0.03 angular minutes per hour. 2. The moon was orbiting the Earth at angular velocity of 14.4 angular degrees per hour. When the moon followed the sun to set on August 29, 2011, the man and the crescent were in different celestial spheres. You can see the Jakarta local horizon, whereas the moon was already below it. Therefore, the man could not see the crescent. However, whether or not the crescent was visible to the man and any Muslim country in the world did not acknowledge this is the first Chibol 1432. The crescent was getting bigger at a growth rate of 0.03 angular minutes per hour. After 10 hours, the crescent was at the position of 37.7 degrees below the eastern part of Jakarta local horizon with crescent width of 0.34 angular minutes, for some 240% larger than when it was at the sunset of August 29, 2011. The Jakarta local time was 4:24 before dawn on August 30th, 2011. Of course, being in different hemispheres, the man was not able to see the crescent. However, if we called a friend in Santiago, Chile, it was sunset on August 29, 2011 in Santiago. The width of the crescent had been around 0.34 angular minutes, and it was at an altitude of 11 degrees as shown in this table. Some ask me, why do we have to sight the crescent in Santiago? To start with, it is pointless going farther east because the moon is younger and therefore the crescent will be slimmer. Therefore, going west is actually an attempt to have bigger chance to see bigger crescent, although Google Earth shows that going farther west will find uninhabited huge ocean. In addition to that, this is just to prove that the crescent at the sunset of August 29, 2011 that beam did not apply to start Chibol 1432 actually had already occurred, and it was getting larger and larger regardless whether or not it was visible to people in Jakarta. Some are also asking, Why do we refer to sunset in Santiago? How can we break the fast by referring to the sunset in Santiago? This is completely a wrong conception. I'll show you the map from Google Earth. If moonsighting teams are spread to Capulet and Jakarta, and crescent is visible in Jakarta, but moonsighting team does not see crescent in Capulet, for example, normally, the authorities in Jakarta then declared that the whole Indonesian territory to have entered Ramadan. However, this does not mean that Muslims in Capulet must start or end the fast by referring to Muslims in Jakarta. Therefore, fasting and praying still use local timings. There are more questions. Why join the foreign territory? Yes, because worship must follow geographical domain, not political one. If Muslims in East Timor used to join fasting with Muslims in Indonesia, how can they now join Muslims in Australia as they are politically more comfortable with Australia? The country that was initially united could later on be torn in pieces like Soviet Union. How can a worship of Muslims is now well adapted to the worship of political passion? Thus, an effort to sight the crescent in Santiago was just to confirm that the day has entered the first of Shawwal, and fasting on that day was forbidden. The authorities should have had sufficient time to declare the presence of crescent to prevent Muslims from fasting in a day when it is forbidden to fast. Now click on the outer increment another 5 times for 5 hours until the crescent was now heading to Jakarta at an altitude of 34 degrees above the eastern local horizon. It was around 9 a.m. Please note the crescent was now in Jakarta's geographic domain. Of course, although the crescent was in the same parts of the hemisphere with Jakarta with a thickness of 0.51 angular minutes or some 400% thicker than on the sunset of August 29, 2011, we would not be able to see the crescent because the sun was bright at about 9 a.m. How to confirm the presence of the crescent? Call a friend in San Diego, California, who was at the sunset of August 29, 2011, and the crescent altitude was about 3 degrees in San Diego. Therefore, moonsighting window is very narrow indeed. In the above example, the window was only about 1 hour and 14 minutes or about 5% of the total 24 hours occurrence of the crescent between the sunsets of August 29th and August 30th. For the remaining 22 hours and 46 minutes, or about 95%, we will not be able to see the crescent. However, it doesn't matter whether or not we see the crescent, or whether or not we acknowledge the presence of the crescent. It is growing bigger continuously. Now, how can highly educated people like us have to stick in a region that is only 5% with high level of difficulty and high risk? Although the sun already set, the atmosphere is still reflecting the sunlight to attenuate the visibility quality of the crescent. It is high risk because there are hundreds of millions of Muslims to make fast in the day when fasting is prohibited if the decision in the 5% window is wrong. If Muslims did not recognize this large crescent just because it is invisible, where should we include this day? We could not include it into the 30th of Ramadan either, as conjunction had happened on August 29, 2011 at about 10 a.m., whilst the crescent has been there and growing larger and larger continuously. The existence of a no-man's crescent was what makes high level of ambiguity with our Islamic calendar. Therefore, the Islamic calendar will never exist, and it costs very very clearly to Muslims, civilization. That will be the subject of discussion for the next module. Thus, this explanation is actually to prove that the sunset of August 29, 2011 have been a valid entry for 1 Chibal 1432. In addition to that, moonsighting is not necessary for educated people who have access to abundant information. There are more questions. So Rasul's sayings for moonsighting are void completely. Of course it is not. If we are stranded in a remote place, no source of information can be accessed. Our mobile phone does not function. Definitely we should still have to practice moonsighting. We also have C6 shadow to mark the timing for prayers. So the Rasul's